In the videos you see, the young girl is Kaylee Jade Priest, accompanied by her mother, Nikki. At first glance, their relationship appears to be a typical, affectionate bond between a mother and her child. However, when cameras are turned off, Nikki transforms into a heartless creature who views her daughter as a nuisance. In an unfortunate series of events, Kaylee was found lifeless mere hours after appearing in this CCTV footage, her body bearing terrible marks of injury. Bizarrely, Nikki was seen dancing once more on TikTok barely 4 weeks later, almost as if nothing had occurred out of the ordinary. The question that remains is, what truly transpired with Kaylee? Furthermore, was Nikki implicated in her own daughter's demise? Let's delve into the chilling case of a mother who supposedly ended her child's life, only to continue posting on TikTok. In the early hours of August 9, 2020, UK's Birmingham law enforcement officers attended to an urgent call from Kinghurst apartment block, where they discovered a young child motionless in her bedroom. This child was Kaylee Jade Priest, a 3-year-old described as an exuberant and lovely toddler with a constant smile on her face. Kaylee resided with her mother, a 23-year-old woman named Nicola Priest, or simply Nikki, and her infant brother who was not even a year old yet. It was Nikki who dialed into the emergency hotline that fateful morning. The emergency team arrived at the scene around 11:17 a.m. However, by 11:25 a.m., the heartbreaking news of Kaylee's passing was delivered. According to one of the paramedics who responded to the call, Nikki was found weeping and in a state of high distress on the bed, repeatedly stating, "I don't think she's alive." In a surprising discovery, they found the young child lying on her back near the bed. Kaylee, dressed in a pink pajama top and blue shorts, was in urgent need of help as they started their attempts to rescue her. It seemed she had passed away a while back. Rigidity had set in her body, and her lips showcased a purplish hue. During this phase, the man who Kaylee's mother was dating was Callum Redfern. She informed the emergency medical team that Kaylee was put to bed at 7 p.m., but was ill thrice during the night. She last checked on her child at about 10:30 p.m. before retiring for the night. However, when she arose from her sleep at 10:30 a.m. the following morning, she discovered her daughter to be unresponsive. Consequently, she transferred her to the floor to initiate CPR. In the paramedics' report, it was mentioned that Nikki informed them of an incident that took place 2 weeks prior, where Kaylee had fallen off her play table and hit her head, but no other injuries were sustained. She said she vomited after she hit her head, but no other injuries, and she was happy and fine after. She told me she had some reduced appetite recently and wasn't eating as normally. Upon slicing open Kaylee's sleepwear, the paramedics uncovered an entirely contrasting narrative. I saw marks on her chest and torso area. There were bruises in small clusters on the side. There was a red abrasion in the middle of the chest. During this time, the emergency personnel began to find unusual aspects in the 3-year-old's bedroom. The room itself was fairly basic, featuring a small, grubby mattress with no bedding or quilt, and devoid of any curtains or shades. It was not fitting of a child's space to rest. This observation was sufficient to get the attention of the law enforcement and led to the interrogation of Nikki and her boyfriend Callum. It was at this point the dreadful reality of what happened to little Kaylee Jade came to light. Nikki, prior to this event, was an avid TikTok user. She regularly shared clips with her child Kaylee, demonstrating her affectionate and nurturing motherly role. Contrary to what was portrayed in the media, the reality was far different. As the inquiry into Kaylee's tragic death was ongoing, Nikki found solace in her freedom to grieve her daughter. She decided to express her mourning through TikTok, sharing a commemorative video of her daughter accompanied by the words, "Rip my baby." In a separate footage, she is captured shedding tears while miming the verses of the song dedicated to my parents. The melody goes as follows: "I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. I know I messed up bad. I should have done better." A short while afterward, a second homage honored Kaylee, mentioning, "I love you so much, darling. Mommy will never forget you ever, Rip Angel." In merely a day, Nikki reverted to her usual demeanor, sharing a dance video alongside its captions. "Way too serious laughing emoji. Dancing always helps me." In a separate video, she displays her latest makeup collection saying, "Love my makeup purchase. Everything goes perfect." In just over 2 months since her daughter's passing, she behaved as if it had no impact on her. Eventually, in September 2023, law enforcement had amassed sufficient proof to detain Nikki and her partner Callum for the homicide of Kaylee. A post-mortem discovered that Kaylee's passing was due to injuries in her chest and abdomen, which matched the effects of being punched, kicked, or stomped on. Some of these injuries displayed indications of healing and were traced back to 2 weeks ahead of her demise, implying she had experienced physical abuse. The severity of the injuries led experts to liken them to those caused by being struck by a car, traveling 40 miles per hour, or falling from a 3-story height onto a concrete surface. Despite their denial in regards to the murder charges against them, Nicola and Callum did accuse each other of physically harming Kaylee. However, it wasn't until their trial in June 2021 when the true nature of Nicola's actions towards Kaylee came to light. Prior to becoming involved with Callum, Nicola was involved with a man named Dan, who was known to have treated Kaylee as if she was his own daughter. While they were together, Dan observed some bruises on Kaylee, but he attributed them to the little girl's propensity for accidents. Despite Nikki not being the ideal mother in his view, he couldn't conceive the possibility of her causing harm to her own child. However, his mother, Lisa Dixon, held contrasting views concerning Nikki. In 2018, there was a time when Nikki and Kaylee resided at Dan's mother, Lisa's house. During this duration, Lisa observed the harsh and cruel behavior Nikki exhibited towards Kaylee. She mentioned that Nikki employed derogatory terms such as rat and bitch when addressing her daughter, whereas her son denied any observation of Nikki's abusive behavior towards Kaylee. Lisa confessed to seeing 6 unique events where Nikki administered harsh discipline to her daughter. Multiple other people who testified in court shared accounts of Nikki striking Kaylee in the head, addressing her with derogatory terms, and expressing harsh sentiments, such as regret for having her. A babysitter, aged 17, who occasionally took care of Kaylee, spoke of times when she saw Nikki, referred to as Nicola, anger-driven and slapping her daughter twice. There was an instance when the young girl requested food, and another when she covered her baby brother's face with a blanket. The babysitter mentioned that she intended to lift the little girl so that Nicola would cease striking her. However, Nicola seized Kaylee, yanked her hair, and dragged her into the bedroom. The nanny stated that her arrival at the flat was around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and her departure fell somewhere between 8:30 and 9 in the evening. A resident of the same building, living just below Nicola, reported to the authorities that she heard a loud bang followed by the cry of Kaylee. The alleged words of Nicola afterward were, "I'll simply state she tumbled from the bed." Some other residents noted how they would frequently overhear Nikki reprimanding Kaylee, uttering phrases such as, "Quiet down," "Go elsewhere," or "Leave me be." Unfortunately, never were any words of kindness or positivity heard. According to their statements, they observed a pattern where music would always begin to play each time Kaylee shed tears, as though an attempt to mask the sound of her sorrow. A close acquaintance of Callum, known as Matthew Alpott, revealed to the jury the problematic relationship between Nikki and Callum. It is noteworthy that the couple had only been together for a period of 3 months before the tragic passing of Kaylee. In that particular time frame, Nikki demonstrated her affection for Callum by prioritizing him over everything else, even her children. Despite her struggles as a single mother burdened by debts and overdue rent, she managed to scrape together $1,140 to purchase Callum a BMW. When Matthew and his accomplice went to acquire the vehicle, they discovered it only cost around $760, yet Callum refrained from informing Nikki, intending to keep the leftover funds. Even though Callum continuously displayed disrespect and a lack of concern for Nikki and her children, she persisted in the relationship. There was even an occurrence where Callum led the local police on a frightening car chase, with both Kaylee and her baby brother present. Matthew testified in court about his friend's awful temper. revealing that he had witnessed Callum disciplining Kaylee and confining her behind a stairgate in order to sleep with Nikki. The prosecutor presented disturbing text messages, demonstrating the pair's plot to mistreat the young girl. In a message exchanged on July 24th, Nikki sent a text to Callum stating, "I'm gonna kill her because she keeps leaving the living room or going in the kitchen. So I've paled her once again and stacked her in her nappy." Callum replied, "Good, give her one for me." Nicola replied with, "I will, babe." After a gap of 3 days, Callum sent a message to Nikki stating, "I'm going to keep the little brat away from me. Sick of your daughter." How appalling must one's state of mind be to find camaraderie in maltreating an innocent child? The prosecutor presented a set of text messages between Nicola and Callum as evidence of their callous attitude towards the young girl. A frightful CCTV recording was also presented in court, which captured the final moments of Kaylee's life before the tragic incident of her murder unfolded. The footage, dated August 7th, showcased Nikki and Kaylee's visit to a local park hours prior to the discovery of the lifeless child in her room. The video shows Kaylee, a typically healthy 3-year-old, merrily hopping around without any apparent discomfort. The video also shows Kaylee trying to get her mother's attention, while Nikki is engrossed with her phone and staring at her own reflection in the mirror. The prosecuting party argued that such neglectful behavior from Nikki was a clear indication of her careless disregard for Kaylee's well-being. Upon reaching the floor of their residential building, it is observed that the mother and daughter exit the elevator, representing the final images of Kaylee alive. Callum's buddy Matthew was actually within the confines of that apartment during the dreadful night of August 8th, prior to the shocking discovery of Kaylee's lifeless body. He recalls arriving to a seemingly normal scene, Kaylee dressed in her pink and white pajamas, consuming her frozen meal at a secluded table in the corner. Upon completing her meal, Kaylee began to play and jump around the apartment, as mentioned by Matthew. At 7 p.m., Callum took Kaylee to bed while Nikki stayed on the balcony smoking. Matthew mentioned that Callum spent around 10 minutes with Kaylee before Nikki joined them in the bedroom. Muffled voices could be heard in Kaylee's room, but the conversation was unclear to Matthew. Typical for a 3-year-old, Kaylee did not fall asleep right away. Consequently, when Callum and Nikki left for Nikki's room, Kaylee could be heard shaking the stairgate that separated her room, requesting to be allowed out to play. Kaylee was ignored despite her requests, and she eventually retired to her room. Sometime later, Callum was heard crying out from the hallway that Kaylee was unwell, according to Matthew. At that time, Matthew was uncertain of Callum's activities in Kaylee's room since she was already asleep. The task of changing the bed linens was undertaken by Nikki, while Callum prepared a bath. After approximately 10 to 20 minutes, they had put Kaylee back to bed and returned to the living room. Matthew, in his statement to the police, mentioned considering departure due to an early morning job out of town, but it was Callum who persuaded him to remain and relax for a while. Nonetheless, when Kaylee fell ill, Callum's attitude swiftly altered and he was eager to leave. According to Matthew, he did return to the flat later to retrieve the sunglasses that Callum left behind. While on the premises, he had a glance into Kaylee's bedroom, where he noticed her in slumber, but could only see her head since she was covered beneath the duvet. Later that night, at approximately 11:17 p.m., Nikki and Callum exchanged text messages. In these messages, Callum says, "I am okay. What about you, baby? How's Kaylee? Sick anymore after? Good. I'm good. She's still being sick. Callum, why? What's up? Nikki, nothing, babe. Just feel sick and now just sick in the bowl. She gets upset when I go to check on her, babe." Nikki's concerns about her daughter's illness eventually gave way to her praise for Callum's visit. After that, Callum announced that he was going to bed, and they both replied, "I love you." Is it possible that Nikki was so preoccupied with herself that she neglected to consider sending her child to the hospital? The jury heard testimony to the effect that Kaylee would have likely lived if she had received medical attention sooner. However, Nikki needed 13 hours to check on her ailing daughter and make an ambulance call. By then, it was too late. However, the issue still stands. What transpired in that room to make a girl who had been well just hours before become so ill? From whence did the bruises originate? And who between Callum and Nikki was to blame for Kaylee's demise? Callum and Nikki were eager to blame one another, even though they both denied having anything to do with Kaylee's unfortunate outcome. Nikki had previously related her version of events, claiming that she heard 3 to 5 knocks coming from Kaylee's room while she was smoking on the balcony. She claimed to be afraid and unsure of how to handle the situation when questioned about why she didn't contact emergency services right away. She claimed that on the morning of August 9th, when she discovered her daughter, she collapsed to the ground and began to cry out. Following the trial, the judge expressed his conviction that Nikki and Callum shared responsibility for Kaylee's demise. The two put Kaylee to bed at 7 o'clock on August 8th so they could go to Nikki's room and spend some alone time. However, Kaylee preferred to remain up and play rather than go to bed, like many kids do. Even though there is no concrete evidence of what transpired next, the judge felt that Kaylee's persistent screaming and pleading for permission to go outside upset Nikki and Callum. As a result of them both taking out their anger on her, the young girl died. The vicious beating Kaylee had experienced was the cause of her vomiting. The court continued to chastise Nikki for failing to request assistance. The judge did not, however, hesitate to clarify that he did not think the two had planned to murder Kaylee. The court ultimately determined that Nikki had committed both manslaughter and child abuse. She received a 15-year sentence for manslaughter and a 3-year sentence for cruelty. The two sentences would occur simultaneously or concurrently. Regarding Callum, he received a 14-year sentence after being convicted of manslaughter. What are your thoughts on Nikki's actions following the death of her child? Please share your opinions in the comments box, and don't forget to subscribe.